Hey guys, Jordan with the Young Turks, TYT Politics. It's been a while. I hope everyone's doing well. I got back from Standing Rock 2 days ago. I was there for 3 weeks, and now I am back in New York for a day or two. After New York, I'll be headed to Texas, where I'll be covering the Trans-Pecos Pipeline, which is another pipeline being built in Texas. It's going from Texas through Mexico. And it's the same company trying to build the Dakota Access Pipeline is trying to build this pipeline. This time, it's conservative cowboys that are pissed off, not just Native Americans and progressives. Conservatives, landowners are having their land seized by eminent domain. So I'm going to be in Texas for a few days covering that. So I've been very focused on Standing Rock for weeks, but now that I'm out of North Dakota, still covering it, not from there, but I'm focused on it. But the Russia business has been pretty astounding to me. I'm not going to lie. You put on CNN, you put on MSNBC, it's like the Cold War on steroids. They might as well be issuing the military draft now for all of us under 30 to, get on the plane. We're going to Russia. It's kind of scary because there's a narrative being built that slam dunk Russian government has hacked the DNC, has hacked Hillary Clinton's campaign chairman's emails, and anybody who says, "Well, can you give me concrete, ironclad, indisputable evidence of such fact?" You're working for the Kremlin if you ask for evidence. I read the full New York Times piece yesterday, a very thorough piece. And they basically cited what U.S. intelligence officials told them. The CIA, the NSA, the Obama administration, as fact, because governments have never been known to lie for their own purposes. So, if you want to call me a KGB operative, like somebody just called me, because I'm cynical or because I don't just restate as fact what government officials tell me, go ahead. Say, I just got off the phone with my master, Vladimir Putin. But as The Intercept reported yesterday, they reported that there's plausible evidence that has been stated that may indicate Russian actors or the Russian government, but it's not enough to say declaratively this was the Russian government. So until I get that, I'm not saying it was the Russian government. I'm not gonna go out on that limb because if we haven't learned the lessons from Iraq, you cannot go out there and start beating the drum for war, start declaring that a foreign government with nuclear capabilities, who have a leader probably insane enough to use them, you cannot go out there definitively saying they tried to interfere with your election, and going further, they tried to help prop up one of the candidates, unless you know it for sure, unless you have evidence for sure. So I'm going to keep researching. But again, if the same journalists foaming at the mouth about Russia are the ones that foamed at the mouth about weapons of mass destruction. And we all know how that worked out. So maybe a little introspection this holiday season, where journalists who led us into war in Iraq, journalists who report what government officials tell them about the drone program without suspicion, even though it's been shown that the CIA and the defense industry has lied about the amount of civilian casualties that have resulted in U.S. drones. It's kind of like the CIA's job is to be good liars. That's the job of the CIA. There's been disagreements between the CIA and the FBI. So I will be happy to come forward once I see definitive evidence to say Russia or the Russian government hacked the DNC or Hillary Clinton's campaign officials. I have no skin in the game. If it's Russia, it's Russia. That doesn't counteract what was actually shown in those emails. The Democratic Party would like you to ignore what was shown in those emails and just focus on the Russian boogeyman, because they don't want to stop cashing their checks from the bankers and the big oil executives and big pharmaceutical companies. I did that report yesterday. You can see that on youtube.com/TYT Politics. If you're not subscribed, let's go. But I want to move from whether it was Russia or not to the complete hypocrisy, selective outrage that the Democratic establishment and the media, their allies in the media, are showing about the integrity of our election. They're so aghast that Russia and foreign agents might have tried to prop up Donald Trump or might have tried to hurt Hillary Clinton. Again, no direct evidence of such. They're so aghast at this. So aghast. There's even speculation that our machines were hacked with no evidence. This is wall to wall on CNN. This is wall to wall on MSNBC. New York Times, Washington Post, all over it. So obviously, when I went back to the archives to find their stories on the Iowa caucus issues with the voting system, Massachusetts primary and the Democratic primary, the Arizona primary that purged all these voters and had 5-hour lines, the New York primary, which purged 127,000 voters, possibly more, the California primary, which did all these shenanigans with deceptive mail going out, people thinking if they're registered as one party, they could still vote. Obviously, I would find tons and tons of articles, videos from CNN, MSNBC, the New York Times, on all these things, because they are the watchers on the wall for our election integrity. How many articles do you think I found? How many videos do you think I found of those same people in the Democratic primary caring? You know the answer. And to the trolls who are going to say, oh, Jordan, stop it. You're a Bernie bro. You know, you're crying over spilt milk. You know, that was months ago. The Democratic primary is over. Bernie lost, blah, 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 blah. I invite your hatred. Bring it, baby. But I think to erase the past and not focus on the selective hypocrisy, the selective outrage, lets these people get away with it. And I'm not going to do that. So we're going to have a little history lesson today, because I find it very convenient and odd and selective that there's 24/7 coverage of Russia possibly, perhaps, close to definitive evidence, hacked the DNC or the Hillary Clinton's campaign official. I wonder why all that outrage. Because according to the Democratic corporate establishment and their allies in the media, it might have hurt their preferred candidate, Hillary Clinton, which is a joke and was a joke in the first place. Hillary Clinton did not lose because of WikiLeaks. Exit polls actually showed people's vote might have been tilted more because James Comey came out about a week before the election saying he was somewhat reopening the investigation into his emails, into her emails. WikiLeaks had a very small impact. Hillary Clinton lost because she was a terrible candidate. That's just the truth. Alfonso, I did take a shower, but thank you. And my nose is red, don't even ask. Hoping to get rid of that in a day or two. So Hillary Clinton might have been hurt by Russian hacks and all this business, so we need to cover it wall to wall. But when Bernie Sanders was being screwed left and right throughout the Democratic primary, we'll let the Young Turks cover it. Democracy Now! Will cover it. Independent media will cover it. Maybe a couple tweets here and there from mainstream media. But that's not a big deal. These people with their conspiracy theories. Yes, to who you were asking, I am on the Young Turks. I'm with TYT Politics. It's a separate channel from the Young Turks. It's basically TYT's reporting arm. If you haven't subscribed, youtube.com/TYT Politics. In less than a year, we already have almost 140,000 subscribers. That's my plug. So let me give you a little history lesson for these election integrity watchers on CNN, MSNBC. Maybe they were asleep. So they could then go back and cover this too. Remember the Iowa caucus. Let me give you the results of the Iowa caucus. Hillary Clinton, 49.84%. 49.84%. Bernie Sanders, 49.59%. Literally a 0.02% difference. A 0.02% difference in the Iowa caucus. Huffington Post. With the lead of 0.2%, Hillary Clinton was declared the winner of the Iowa caucuses. Describing the caucuses as a debacle, the Des Moines Register's editorial board wrote, the Iowa Democratic Party's refusal to undergo scrutiny or allow for an appeal reeks of autocracy. The results were too close not to do a complete audit of results. Too many questions have been raised. Too many accounts have arisen of inconsistent counts, untrained and overwhelmed volunteers, confused voters, crammed precinct locations, a lack of voter registration forms, and other problems. Too many of us, including members of the Register editorial board who were observing caucuses, saw opportunities for error amid Monday night's chaos. To make matters worse, results from 90 precincts were reported, quote, missing. As such, the Iowa Democratic Party restaged the results for these precincts. But even results that didn't need to be restaged were suspect to error. When the Sanders campaign asked for review of the results, the Iowa Democratic Party refused. 0.02% Bernie Sanders lost by. This isn't even to mention that all the networks called the caucus for Hillary Clinton before all the precincts were in. And 0.2% of a difference. Let me tell you, if Hillary Clinton was on the opposite side and was down 0.02% to Bernie Sanders, you don't think every damn network and every damn corporate establishment lawmaker would be calling for an immediate recount? Again, this isn't to restate history and a pity party or be a Bernie bro. This is to point out the media's hypocrisy and the selective coverage and outrage when your candidate might have been negatively affected. When it was Bernie, you didn't care. And that was just Iowa. So the Massachusetts primary, which didn't get a lot of focus. So Hillary Clinton, 49.73% to Bernie Sanders, 48.33%. So literally about a point difference. Well, do we remember what happened in Massachusetts besides Elizabeth Warren not endorsing Bernie Sanders, which I think would have put him over the edge? Huffington Post. Hillary won Massachusetts by less than 2%, but it was far from a clean victory. On the day of the primary, Bill Clinton was accused of unethical and very likely illegal electioneering in the Boston area. According to reports, Bill, quote, blocked off several polling entrances, preventing people from voting. In New Bedford, a Reddit user posted a video depicting the former president speaking from a megaphone. Voters were roped off and could not enter their polling places. It's against Massachusetts state law to campaign within 150 feet of a polling station. As the New York Times puts it, the former president got a little too close to voters in Boston, prompting William F. Galvin, the Massachusetts Secretary of State, to notify the Clinton campaign of the rule and remind election workers that even a president can't go inside and work a polling place. Well, guess what? He did go inside that polling place. Guess what? When you have a former president of the United States come in anywhere, roads get blocked off. It delays traffic. It delays voting lines. I wonder why Bill Clinton did that on Massachusetts. I wonder why. Again, Bernie lost by 2 points, less than 2 points, and Bill Clinton slowed down one polling place and a lot of traffic. And by the way, it's not just me who wonders about Massachusetts. It's the golden boy Nate Silver from 538. He wrote, other results are a bit harder to explain. How did Clinton barely win the Iowa caucus when she got crushed in other Midwest caucus states? So Clinton lost in several other nearby caucus states to Iowa, but somehow won Iowa, including Kansas and Minnesota. Also, how did Sanders lose Massachusetts after winning New Hampshire by so much? Well, you want to call me a conspiracy theorist? Go ahead. But Iowa loses by 0.02%. Massachusetts loses by less than 2 points, and Bill Clinton's blocking traffic and making polling lines last an hour or two longer. You make the decision how that affected it. But the media I didn't hear any mainstream media on either. Did you? I didn't hear about the election integrity. And, we have to cover this because Bernie Sanders might be getting robbed here. I didn't hear any of that. And of course, Arizona. Arizona, Hillary Clinton was declared the winner in Arizona's Democratic primary with less than 1% of the votes tabulated and hundreds, if not thousands of voters still waiting in line. Why the long lines? Because in Maricopa County, which includes Phoenix and has the vast majority of the state's registered Democrats, there was no place to vote. In the 2012 primary, Maricopa County had 200 polling places for 300,000 voters. This year, it had 60 polling places for an estimated 800,000 registered voters. The results were predictable. Did you hear the mainstream media reporting before the Arizona primary, aghast at polling places being cut from 200 down to 60 by a Republican who cut it, by the way? I didn't hear anything, did you? Maybe Russia hacked the brains of journalists and corporate Democrats and only unhacked it after the general election. I didn't hear any of this. And again, it's not about Bernie Sanders. I didn't make any. I didn't hide the fact that I supported Bernie Sanders. It didn't affect my reporting or my facts, but I did personally support him. But replace Bernie Sanders with anybody else. The media has a responsibility to cover, particularly if there's electoral rigging going on, if there's election fraud, if there's voter suppression. It's the media's role to hold the powerful accountable, because these misdeeds are not happening miraculously from the sky. Humans are pulling the strings. Okay, machines don't just, some machines malfunction by itself, but when there's machine rigging, it's usually a person rigging it. When there's voters being purged off the rolls, somebody's purging them off the rolls. And sorry, I don't go by the honor system that it's always just a human error or clerical error, like they said in New York, which I'll get to. So, Arizona, you had thousands of voters who were registered Democrat most of their lives. Suddenly, they're bumped off the rolls to become independents. They can't vote. Potential Bernie voters. We know in New York, which I covered the day of, there was a lawsuit filed the day of the primary. I covered it for weeks after. 126,000 New York Democrats, probably more than that, frankly. 126,000 registered Democrats suddenly purged off the Democratic voting rolls, made independents. In Brooklyn, guess who was born in Brooklyn? Bernie Sanders. Did you see mainstream media, wall to wall? We need to investigate right away. We might need to have a recount in Brooklyn. We might need to let anyone who is independent vote because they might have been purged, as they might have been Democrats. Of course not. It was all horse race and all covering Trump's every tweet and every booger. And the rat race between Trump and Ted Cruz, and Trump said this about Heidi Cruz, and this, Cruz said this about Trump. All nonsense. While hundreds of thousands of Americans who were correctly registered to vote and could have voted for Bernie Sanders, hey, maybe could have voted for Hillary Clinton, whatever, couldn't vote. Again, Russia must have been the reason. Russia must have hacked. But, maybe they all wrote the stories, maybe they all did the videos, and maybe Russia hacked them and stopped them from airing or publishing. Maybe that was it. New York, over 100,000 people purged off the rolls, can't vote. I mean, California. If you don't know what happened in California, New York Observer. A month after the California primary, Hillary Clinton's initial lead of 12 points has diminished to 7. Still a substantial win, but not convincing enough to halt statewide investigation into voter fraud. The controversy stems from California's semi-open policy allowing voters who aren't registered Democrats to participate in the primary. Thousands of provisional ballots were cast, but these votes were not allowed to use the same ballot as Democrats if they didn't obtain a special crossover ballot. Their vote was nullified. Independent voters may have been disenfranchised during the June 7th primary because of unusual rules that don't apply to voters who register under a party. Independents, falling under the category of no party preference, needed to use special crossover ballots in certain California counties, Los Angeles, San Francisco, and San Diego being among them, to vote for president. A grassroots organization, Watch the Vote, is collecting complaints to show a civil grand jury the various ways voters were disenfranchised during the California primary. That's not even to mention the deceptive mail that went out to voters. I think, intentionally trying to confuse them about parties they could register to. Very complicated to understand the mail. We did a great documentary, mini doc on TYT Politics, youtube.com/TYT Politics, about the election suppression and election fraud there. You can watch that. It was called Uncounted. So all of these states, would Bernie Sanders have won? I don't know. I'm not going to just foam at the mouth and tell you what you want to hear. I don't know. I think it would have been a lot closer. I think it's he won 22 states. Frankly, I think he did win Iowa. Frankly, I think he could have won Massachusetts. And by the way, if he won Iowa and then won New Hampshire, I mean, imagine the media hysteria. Bernie Sanders winning the first caucus and the first primary. They would have been forced to actually cover him to the level he would have been covered. Imagine the fundraising that would have come into Bernie. I'm not saying he wouldn't have won South Carolina. He got crushed in South Carolina. But winning two out of the first three states, everybody looks at Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina. That's the first three of the horse races. So when the media focuses 24/7 on Russia, why do they do it? When the Democratic establishment, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, all of these Democrats focus 24/7 on Russia. You know why? They want to distract you from focusing on why Hillary Clinton actually lost the election, why Democrats are now the minority in the United States Senate and House. Part of it is because of the gerrymandering, of course, and the way the districts are lined up. Why are they the minority? Why did Hillary Clinton lose? Because U.S. voters are now wising up to the fact, yeah, we know about Republicans. And Donald Trump, if he ran as a traditional Republican, wouldn't have won. He ran as a populist. A lot of his policies that he proposed aren't Republican or conservative. He won because he fooled people into thinking he's a populist who's going to bring their jobs back and cares about middle class and average workers. That's why he won, not because he's a Republican. But the Democratic establishment, their allies on CNN, they don't want you to focus on money in politics. They don't want you to focus on the fact that the most establishment corrupt candidate just got her clock cleaned in the Electoral College. Of course, she won by nearly 3 million votes in the popular vote. Let's not even get into how stupid that system is. Chuck Schumer doesn't want to start reevaluating whether Democrats should have fundraisers with Wall Street bankers, big oil, big pharmaceutical, big technology. They're not going to stop that. Are you kidding me? They'd laugh at that. Oh, that's not why we lost. That's not why we lost. That's what Harry Reid says. That's what Chuck Schumer says. Nancy Pelosi. We just got to kind of tweak around the edges, and we'll be back and better than ever. They don't want you to focus on them being bought and paid for the last 2 or 3 decades. They don't want you to focus on that. So they're going to give you the Russian boogeyman. But don't forget, they didn't care, and the media didn't care, when a democratic socialist who actually cares about working people, who is going to tax the rich, who is going to tax and end the gravy train for those same special interests that Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer sit down for cocktails with, they didn't care when he was getting screwed. And that's the real story. And that's what people shouldn't forget. It doesn't matter if it happened months ago. It's still very relevant. The Democratic primary, the purging, the voter suppression, the fraud, that's a story that never got its due coverage because they did not want to focus on it. They didn't want to elevate it because they wanted Bernie to lose. It's the bottom line. It's the truth. And I could objectively say that. They wanted Bernie to lose. And we see it. We saw it in WikiLeaks. Journalists, Hillary Clinton's campaign planting stories with journalists, Democratic lawmakers teasing and mocking Bernie. This is what they wanted. So I will report for my Russian bosses on a daily basis if there's news. You know, I work for the Kremlin, obviously. And, but I'm not going to cover Russia 24/7 and this nonsense because I don't think it's a real story. And you know what? If the Russian government hacked the DNC and John Podesta, Hillary Clinton's campaign chairman, then we should cover it. But I'm not going to cover it at the expense of actually focusing on what was in those emails. That's it. I'll be going on Young TYT Politics Facebook page in a little bit to do another story on our friend Harry Reid. Take care.